I'm working on a presentation for a keynote that I'm giving on Tuesday, and I needed to come up with an example, but I didn't want to do that by myself. This is just a finishing touch that I needed to get in before the slide deadline. And so I wanted to walk you through how I used a couple of different AI tools in order to do that and the messiness of the process. It's not just I wrote a prompt and I got exactly what I wanted. That's not how it works in reality. The example was for the AUDIENS framework, a framework of mine for building AI products and features that are actually valuable. So there's 7 different ingredients that you can choose from, 7 elements, and you can mix and match those in order to create a strategy or product that is going to work for you and actually be worth building. And so I wanted to show that you don't need all of these ingredients in order to create something useful, but I didn't want to think of that myself. So the first thing that I did was I needed to figure out what letters that I want to combine. So I figured that there had to be some anagram that I could use. So I went to Perplexity and so threw that in there and said, here's the letters of the framework. What can we make? So looking through this list, I wanted something that wasn't too long. What can I pick from? Okay, sand, that's a good word. Then from there, I had this thought of we could have some fun with that. Okay, let's use sand. So then I went to ChatGPT at that point, went to the cutting edge model O3 and provided a screenshot of the framework overview that gives a bullet outline of what each of the words actually represents in a little bit more detail, and said to provide a few examples that come through from the outline that I provided. Thought for 11 seconds and gave me a few different examples. It chose an example for each one, stickiness, alignment. Now I'm going to go through all of these features, but I didn't want to go through and give an example for each one because that would just take too long. This section would then take probably 30 minutes just to go through the examples, which is a presentation for another time. So I had to correct it and say, actually, I want an example that includes all of these. Then understood what I was meaning and gave me an example of Microsoft 365. So this is a part that comes in that's a really important part when you're using AI, and that is messy. It's not one prompt and you get exactly what you want every time, unless it's something really trivial, which is essentially a Google search where it clicks for you. Instead, it's trial and error and pushing it in the right direction. The really important thing here is applying taste, applying curation. Generally, I like to use AI to create multiple options and pick the one that I like most and then follow a path down that way. So create 4 different options, pick one, create 4 different options, pick one. So you go through all these different branches. And as the human, our job is to really guide and curate the experience into something that's actually a good solution for what we're trying to achieve. So I didn't feel like this was a good example. So I asked for another one from a different company. It gave me Tesla full self-driving, which is cool, but who goes, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to put on my roadmap for next quarter, full self-driving. It just wasn't really relatable and applicable. And interestingly, it really had to do some thinking to get to a second example, 1 minute 35 seconds. At that point, I felt like this was going in the wrong direction, wasn't sure how to prompt it to get something better. And so I went for another tool in my toolbox as somebody using AI in order to do their job. I went to another model. Sometimes it's even just going to a new chat starting fresh, but I decided to go for just another model. And so in this tab, I went to O4 Mini High. Basically gave it the same prompt, but this time, rather than giving it the whole framework, which is excessive context, let me just give the definitions of the 4 things that I wanted to include. So A for alignment, D for data, N for novelty and enablement, and S for stickiness, and gave the one-liner definitions for those to see if I could get a better example. Went and had a look at this. It sounded like a pretty good fit. Turns out this isn't really an accurate representation of what the feature does, so not a good example. Okay, ask for another example and a one-liner so I didn't have to go Googling it to find out what it was. Then it gave me an example from a product that I use all the time, the Scripts Overdub. And so that was the feature that I'm going to use as my example. And that's how I got to that and being able to include it in my presentation without having to think of an example. And all this in just a few minutes. Took me longer to explain this to you than it did to actually do it. So I didn't actually have to go and do all this thinking and curation and decision making. Instead, I could just look at a set of suggestions and pick the right one. So I delegated most of the work and thinking to ChatGPT. But it could have been any other model. And if I got stuck here, I probably would have gone to Claude and then I would have gone to Google. So having multiple tools up your sleeve, key strategy when you're using AI to get stuff done at work.